I know. Anyone who's been waiting patiently for this video would not be expecting it to start here, at this horrible door that leads to my office. I'll explain. You see, I'm pretty sure even my fiercest critic would concede that a Q&A video with no audio really doesn't cut the mustard. But I guess that's what keeps you on your toes when you're filming YouTube videos. Sometimes the GoPro's going to let you down, and you have to come back here and fix those problems. In fact, I spend hours sitting at this desk editing my videos. So in a way, it's a good thing that the Q&A is coming from the nerve centre of the channel. And in a job that, fair enough, might look quite glamorous, this is my actual view most of the time. So I really should get started with some of your questions, and in between, I'll show you around. This is what I did in the original attempt. I put all the questions onto 4 decks of blank playing cards. Yes, there were that many. And I got the independent adjudicator to shuffle them. Well, now they've been reshuffled. Let's see what you're asking me. So I've got 52 questions plus 2 jokers. If this video is going to be finished before the sun goes down, I'd better get started. And we'll start with this one. Oh, we're starting with a bit of a corker, folks. Any angry encounters around filming? Well, not really. It tends to go quite smoothly. I try to be respectful and discreet when I've got the camera out, but there are exceptions, of course. There was that time in Germany when I was chased down the street by 6 angry Germans. Or was it 4 angry Germans? Maybe my memory's exaggerating that one. But in all honesty, it tends to be in the UK around airports, railway stations, ferry ports, and that's about security, places you're not allowed to film. The thing that I don't get about that is that people have got mobile phones, they're filming, taking photographs, but when I bring the GoPro out, which has probably got a smaller sensor, it's me that they come up to, but that's the way it goes, isn't it? Right, next question. If you could pick one boat, plane, ferry or car, past or present, to travel in, what would it be? Oof. The obvious answer would be Concorde, wouldn't it? I think we would all have loved to have experienced Concorde. Not that I could have afforded it back then, not that I could afford it now, but it'd be easier to justify if there was a video involved. At the other end of the scale, I would say a Citroen 2CV. That's a car that we used to have when I was a kid. I got so much stick about my parents having a 2CV. But isn't it funny how things you were embarrassed about back then, you would do anything for now? I think they go for about £12,000–15,000 these days, but I love one of those. The simplicity of it, you could roll the roof back, those dodgy gears, the noise of that 600cc engine got up the road, fantastic. Oh, and add in the original ferry that used to go to Orkney and Shetland. Was it the St Clair? I'd like to go on that. Do trips feel like holidays or like work? I'm loving these questions, by the way. Now, don't get me wrong, I've got the best job in the world. I love exploring new places, but I would say it's work. When you see a YouTube video, you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. You've got all the stuff that goes on in the background before you travel, but also at destination, because I don't tend to script things. Half the time I don't know where I'm going, so that really keeps you on your toes. And when I say keeps you on your toes, I mean literally you can be working from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 at night. So aye, it's work, let's be honest. What's your favourite cheese? These questions are keeping me on my toes, I tell you. Well, I do like a good old cheddar. I also like manchego. When I'm in Spain, I remember seeing manchego for the first time and I saw the kind of crust on it and I thought, I will not like this kind of white cheese. Absolutely love the stuff, and whenever I'm in a fancy supermarket in the UK, I'm always looking out for it. Of all the places you've visited, where would you both live? Oh, I think I can answer for both of us with that one, and I would say Santander in Spain. I'm assuming that you mean abroad, but that's one place that as soon as we went there the first time, just the climate, it's actually a wee bit like Scotland up in the north of Spain. You wouldn't expect it. It's quite green up there. They get their fair share of rain, but the climate is still a bit better than Montrose. Every time we've been there, we've been back a few times, we always say, yeah, we could live here. So Santander in Spain. Other places, Malaga maybe in the south of Spain. I'm saying Spain, I guess, because I speak a bit of Spanish as well. That would help. But in the summer in Malaga, I think that'd be too much for me. Have you ever run out of Schengen days? Well, for those of you who are not aware, since Brexit, us British travellers going to the Schengen countries in Europe, we're allowed, I think it's 90 days every 180 days. So we have 180 days a year to travel in Europe. The fact is, I've never got close. I tend to do my trips quite quickly, but I did get asked recently when I was in Iceland by one of the immigration officers, have you counted your Schengen days? And that kind of prompted me to do it. And I was way short of the 90 days, so no problems there. What did you do before YouTube? Wow, how far do you want me to go back? Let me try and rattle through the whole story. Travel-wise, did you know I didn't leave the country till I was 19 years old? It was my first flight as well. It was a British Airways 747 Heathrow to San Francisco. But that was about the extent of my teenage travel years overseas anyway. And when I got into my early 20s, I decided I'm bored of Scotland and I want to go as far away as I can go. At the time, New Zealand were handing out 1-year working visas, so I grabbed one of those, got on a Singapore Airlines flight to Auckland, and when I got there I didn't want to be like a tourist, I wanted to live like a local. So I got a flat share with some guys, some of whom I'm still in touch with to this day, and I got a job with Budget Rent-A-Car. Now part of that job was delivering cars, and that got me as far north as Whangarei, the Bay of Islands, as far south as Queenstown and Invercargill. What a time that was. But eventually my visa ran out, I came home, and I was kind of stuck in customer service for a while. Around that time I was getting bored again, decided I want to learn Spanish, went and studied Spanish in Spain, that took me on to university, eventually got the dream marketing job that I'd always wanted, and then thought, I really don't want to do this. And that's where YouTube came in. It started as a hobby, but it just grew and grew, and the rest, as they say, is history. What's your favourite flavour of yoghurt? That's a random question. Well, if frozen yoghurt counts, can we stay in New Zealand? Because I used to go down to my local supermarket, New World, and their own brand, lime frozen yoghurt, even after all these years. I can still taste it. I've tried to recreate it, I've tried to find it online without success. Maybe I should try again. Any method of transport you'd like to try but haven't? Well, that's actually quite an easy one, because recently when I was in Bonn, when I was researching that trip, I saw that they had Zeppelin rides available. Well, they weren't available till the summer. I was there too early. They were also a bit on the pricey side. I think it was about €600 to €700 for about 45 minutes. But to ride in a Zeppelin, that would be something unique, wouldn't it? Another thing I was thinking actually, and it's from a recent Planes, Trains, Everything video, Scott went on the hovercraft. Was that to the Isle of Wight? I'd like to do that. I might steal that one sometime, mate. Aye, great question so far, folks. But let's pause for a minute and look at something in the office. What can we look at? Ah, there's one I always get asked. What hiking shoes do you wear? Well, I wear these old Salevas. I think that's how you say the brand. I have never had a blister in these from the very first time that I wore them, but as you can see from the soles, they'll need to be replaced soon. And you can see here that I've got lots of knickknacks from my travels. I like to put things on the walls. I've got my travel board. When I'm abroad, I try to pick up a pin or a badge as a souvenir and pop it on there. We've got the letter I got from YouTube when I got to 100,000 subscribers. That was a great moment, but I don't actually know where my silver button is. I'll need to track that down. Fife Coastal Path, when we completed that, we got a certificate. No way is that 2022. Time certainly flies. And more recently, when we met the captain on board Queen Mary 2. And Taylor Swift, when we went to that concert last year. I need to dust these frames. So as you can probably tell, I like to be surrounded by my travel memories, and I'll show you some more of that later in the video, but I always wanted an office like this. When we lived in Edinburgh, it just wasn't possible because we're in this tiny little flat, but now we're in Montrose, I've got it, and I love it. Right, let's get back to these questions. They're not going to answer themselves. Which luxury item would you take to a desert island? Wow. I'd like to be all windswept and interesting and say it'd be a notebook to capture my deepest thoughts, but let's be honest, it's going to be a mobile phone with a good signal, and it'd have a camera as well, so I could still capture my thoughts, couldn't I? How would your life change if you won £1 million? I would like to think that it wouldn't change too much. Maybe a detached house. We've always lived in flats and we've had noisy neighbours, we've had all those problems. Maybe today I'm the noisy neighbour, so it'd be good to have a place where we don't have to worry about any of that stuff. But £1 million? That'd get us a nice place up in these parts, I tell you. Do you still get embarrassed filming in public? Absolutely I do. I mean, it's not the most natural thing in the world, standing in the street talking to a GoPro. Even worse when you're on a bus or on a train, and especially in the UK, because you always get the feeling that more people understand what you're saying. They might be listening in as you stumble in your words and have to do retakes, so it never gets easy, and especially after you haven't filmed for maybe a couple of weeks. And you go out again with a camera, you always just feel a wee bit tense and uneasy. And as well, because YouTubers, we just work on our own. I think if you were working as part of a team, it'd be so much easier. But yeah, just me standing there with a camera, hello. It'll never get easy. Right, before I have to change this battery, let's go and have a look at this wall over here. Just ignore my reflection in the mirror. Hello, we've got a TV guide from Ohio, but the thing about this is it's dated 3rd of August 1973, the day that I was born. Of course we've got Taylor Swift, we've got some original artwork from Alicia. Who remembers which video this was from? Let me know in the comments. That one didn't quite work out. We've got a business class menu from one of the few business class flights that I've been on. We've got the Greg's pickup point, that one's more recently with Jasper the cat. Down here we've got just a newspaper article that we thought was quite funny, Psycho Seagulls copying humans. And we've got Pepsi, that was our greyhound years ago. We got her from the Greyhound Awareness League, so she was an old racer. And we've got a gander poster from that road trip we did out in Newfoundland. Gander was always a bucket list place for me, so it was incredible to finally get there. Sorry, I feel like this is starting to drag a bit. I'm not used to doing these, so let's crack on with some quick fire questions. What, in your opinion, are the top 3 videos you've posted? Oh, that's not a good place to start for quick fire. Let me think. Definitely the Iceland ferry. That's one I'd always wanted to do and where the experience actually exceeded expectations. When it went up to Fulla in Shetland, a video that when I was filming it, it didn't quite go to plan, but when I came home and edited it, I really liked that one. And let's go way back in time to Edinburgh's Oscar. Who remembers that one? The Gene Brody video. In fact, that was a prop from it. Oh, that needs a dust. Is there anywhere you don't want to go? Simple answer to that is no. As long as the Foreign Office says that it's safe, or at least relatively safe, then I'll go there. Something I've picked up doing this job is that even in the most boring of places, you'll find something interesting. Where did your love for the great outdoors come from? I guess that's as a child. We never went abroad. We always just camped in summer holidays. I remember going back to school and all the kids would be talking about Mallorca and Benidorm, and I'd be like, yeah, we had 2 weeks in the rain in Scotland, and we had a little Fiat 500 when I was a kid as well, and I can still remember to this day the whole family and the dog and all the camping equipment trying to squeeze into that car. Not fun at the time, but fun memories now. How much do you earn from YouTube? Well, that changes every month. You're not on like a set salary, so it depends how good your videos are, to be honest. I earn enough. I earn more than I earned when I had like what I would call a proper job, but I pay my taxes and all the travel doesn't come cheap, so at the end of the day, it's probably not as much as you would expect. What was your furthest journey as a child? Well, like I say, we didn't go too far when I was a kid, but we did go to a wedding once in Poole. And we lived in Stonehaven at the time, so I can remember getting the bus from Aberdeen to Bournemouth, I think, changed in London. Was that an overnight bus? I can remember some guy sleeping on my grand's shoulder. That was some experience. And of course, it was back in the days before we had iPads and phones and all that kind of stuff to keep you entertained. 3 great things about living in Scotland. Well, the scenery for one. Let's go for the weather. I'm not sure Alicia would agree with me on that one. And tap water. You can drink the tap water anywhere and it's really good. Would you do an extreme day trip and where would you go? Extreme day trips, they're quite popular on YouTube at the moment, so I really should do one. I think if I was doing it, it would have to have some kind of challenge element, so go as far as you can go. But then you're going to have problems with time zones, whether you go left or whether you go right. Somewhere that I've wanted to go since we've lived in Montrose though is Luzarches, which is a district or a town just north of Paris, and it's twinned with Montrose, so that could be part of an extreme day trip. What's your favourite soup? Well, I do like Alicia's homemade Polish soups. I like all the kind of normal cream of tomatoes. I like a Scotch broth. A homemade Scotch broth is good. And that time we went to film Cullen Skink up in Cullen itself, I never thought I would like that as a white soup with fish, but I've never looked back. Any plans for another challenge with Scott? Absolutely. I love meeting up with Scott, and when you can do a video together, it's all the better. We've only done one so far. That's just a case of schedules not matching, but we are planning something. It's in the pipeline and should be getting filmed maybe July or August. Will you do more pub crawls? Yes, we will. We've actually got one in mind at the moment, which is not too far from home. They're fun videos to make, but at the same time, they're quite difficult. They've got their challenges. You're going into a place where there's drunk people, where you've got copyright music, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, they're a lot of fun to make. What's the hardest thing about YouTube? Well, the first thing that springs to mind, especially as a travel creator, is that it's quite time consuming. You end up working maybe 80 hours a week, doing everything yourself. That is not easy. But at the same time, it's not the worst job in the world. So maybe routine. I'm a person who benefits from having a good routine, like get up in the morning, have your breakfast, do your work, go for a walk, have your dinner. And that's something you can't really do. You tend to be getting up in the middle of the night sometimes. You'll get back from a trip, you're absolutely exhausted, so you don't leave the house for 2 days. So as a person, that's something that doesn't really suit me, but I deal with it. How long does planning and editing take? See, that kind of follows on quite well, doesn't it? The planning of a trip, it's not always something that I put too much work into. You've probably noticed that in my videos. But the editing is the thing that really takes the time. Someone once said, I think it was maybe Casey Neistat, that it can take an hour to edit 1 minute of footage, and that's not so far from the mark. Right, one more question, then we'll have a look at something else. What are your earliest memories of ferry travel? Well, that's a funny one because I didn't used to take ferries as a kid. It's quite a recent thing. Maybe earliest memory would be going on the Waverley, if that counts, on the Clyde, going down the water. But apart from that, when I lived in New Zealand, I used to take a little ferry from the North Shore in Devonport over to the Central Business District where I went to work. And that was a daily commute on the ferry both ways. So that was just a tiny little ferry. But the first time I actually did a big ferry trip was probably the Northlink on the Channel. Right, what else can we look at? See this little homemade trophy? This is from the East Coast Trail. That's when we did that long distance walk in Newfoundland, Canada. I carried that bit of stone from, I think, about day 2. And that was 13th to 24th of September 2018. We do have some photos up on the wall actually from that epic trail. It's just a shame that that was from before the YouTube channel, so we couldn't share it with you. And they're just below my certificate as the Lord of Glencoe. But as you maybe know, we did get back to Newfoundland last year, and on my board of videos still to be edited, yes, East Coast Trail. So on that little SD card, I do still have something to share with you. So if I ever get round to editing it, or maybe we could put it on a second channel, that's something else we were thinking about, having a second channel with all the videos that didn't make it to the main channel. Let us know what you think about that. What would you say is your must-have travel item? Noise cancelling headphones, need I say any more? What happened to the van? Ugh, that one makes me emotional. We loved that van, but over time it just became more impractical. Fewer and fewer places to park overnight. And of course we now have to contend with low emission zones. What made you learn Spanish? Well, I'm glad that one's come up because there's a bit of a story behind it. It was one of the first trips that I did was a tour of Spain. I was in my 20s, I didn't plan anything in advance, I had no accommodation booked. I just went to Madrid, then I ended up going Zaragoza on the train, on to Barcelona, down to Valencia, Malaga, Granada, Cadiz, and I ended up in Salamanca. And when I got to Salamanca, I said to myself, I'm going to come back here and learn Spanish because there are lots of language schools there, some of them at universities, and I ended up going back to Universidad Pontificia de Salamanca. And I was there for just under a year in the university doing one of their kind of foreign language courses, learning Spanish. And then when I came home, I actually ended up going to university as a mature student and studying Spanish there. So it kind of came full circle. And it's something I've tried to keep on top of, but I'm a bit rusty these days, but I've still got enough to get by. Has any trip been a huge disappointment? There's a question. Can't think of anywhere off the top of my head. But I wonder if St Kilda counts because I booked to go there last year. It's a bucket list destination for me, a small island off out in the ocean, a wee ferry to get there, so it's never guaranteed. And of course for me, it was cancelled. But the problem is, just getting to the start line, you have to go out to the Outer Hebrides, expensive place to go. Long story cut short, I spent 700 quid and I've still not seen St Kilda. The best and worst part of travelling to make videos. Well, the best part is, without doubt, exploring new places. The worst part, airports. They're not fun places to be these days, are they? Which UK attraction would you like to revisit? Oh, I'd love to go back to, what was it called? Yes, I've still got my ticket from it, the SS Great Britain in Bristol. Which is, of course, Brunel's famous old ship. But when I visited last year, they had an offer on Kids Go Free. And there were kids virtually everywhere, which is not so good for filming YouTube videos. So I'd like to go back and give that one another try. And the other one that's just sprung to mind is in Wales, where they filmed The Prisoner. Is it Portmeirion? We skipped it last time. Everyone told us in the comments we should have gone, so Portmeirion. Oh, and this flag here, by the way, it was actually flown on the SS Great Britain, hence its slightly sun-faded appearance. The trip you'd love to do but can't withstand the heat. Malta and Croatia. We always say we'll go to both places, and then we remember just as it's getting up to like 40, 50 degrees Celsius. So remind us again when it gets a bit cooler. What inspired you to start a YouTube channel? Great question. Well, for me, it was from just watching YouTube and people like Noel Phillips, who I met in Svalbard. And I just thought he makes it look so easy, doesn't he? Well, about 6 years later, I'm still learning. Oh, we've got a Joker question. Who invented the skip? I don't know who invented the skip. Bobby Moore. If you know, you know. Have you thought about hosting, guiding some trips? Ah, that's a nice thought, isn't it? But it's just not me. I don't feel like you would see the real SteveMarsh if I did it. I'd be too worried about the weather. Is everyone enjoying themselves? Is the trip going okay? So, as nice as it sounds, and I wish I was that person, I couldn't do it. How well do you know other YouTubers? Well, not as well as you might think. This is one of those jobs that you tend to do in isolation. We do speak in the comments section, of course, but from actually meeting YouTubers, Scott from Planes, Trains, Everything, who I've met a few times, and we've got another challenge coming soon, I promise, and Matt from Matt's Planet. Lovely guy, very knowledgeable as well. We've picked his brains about a few things. Any tips for YouTube beginners? Well, the main thing I would say is be true to yourself, be authentic, do the things that you love. I was doing all of these trips long before I started filming them, and even when I did start filming them, it was just as a hobby. So don't come into this thinking I can make a lot of money. If you do something you love, it'll shine through in your videos and you will be successful, I promise. Would you ever do something like Race Across the World? It's funny that question's come up because we actually did apply for it just a couple of months ago, and that would be the series that's getting filmed in September. I don't think they'd want YouTubers, but the application is in. How do you cope with sleep deprivation on long journeys? Well, the short answer is I don't. I have never slept well in public transport, and when I get back from those trips, I tend to be absolutely shattered. On the bright side, it's good for the videos, and actually filming it kind of helps you get through those long nights. Oh no, we've got another joker. I knew this one would come up. Do you really like Taylor Swift? Do I really like Taylor Swift? What do you think? So of course the answer is yes. I'm a proud Swiftie, and I even had the pleasure of seeing her in concert last year. One of the best nights of my life. And seriously, if you don't know Taylor Swift's music, go off and listen to a track like But Daddy I Love Him. Read the lyrics. The girl is an absolute genius. Right, on with the questions. How do you survive with such a small bag? Oh, the Ryanair carry-on, it just seems to get smaller and smaller. But it just comes with experience. If you don't use something on one trip, it doesn't come with you on the next. I am getting into the habit of actually paying for luggage now, but if you're on a trip that's got multiple sectors of flights, luggage can be really expensive. So that's the times when I just have to suffer. And ironically, that's the longer trips where you have the smaller bags, but that's just the way it goes. Have you ever spent the night under a tree or similar? Yes, I've done it a few times. Not on the YouTube channel though. When I went to the Faroe Islands for the first time, I slept in an old abandoned building one night. That was the coldest night of my life. Actually, the next morning, I found a public toilet that opened at 6 AM and I lay on the floor of the toilet. But that's enough said on that. And that trip that I did round Spain, when I hadn't booked any accommodation, I did find myself sleeping in railway stations on benches, but I was young then, so it was okay. Dundee or Aberdeen? Dundee. Which places surprised you the most, good and bad? We'll start with the bad. That's easy because it's in a part of the world that I adore. Northern Scandinavia, who would have thought it? But the towns of Rovaniemi and Kiruna, they just didn't appeal to me at all. Rovaniemi, I just felt like it was a tourist trap, and Kiruna, it was so industrial, just not what I expected. Oh, and I almost forgot the good. Well, I don't need to go too far back for that. My recent rail journey in Europe, A to Z. I'll be honest with you, I did that for the train journey, not for the places at either end. But when you find two places like Aachen in Germany and Zwolle in the Netherlands, it shows you when you go to a new country, don't go to the big city. Go to some of the smaller places and you will find some absolute gems. Oh, and another question quite relevant to that. Where is number one on your bucket list? Easy. the Falkland Islands. I have looked at itineraries to get there. Problem is, I think you have to go from Santiago de Chile. There's only one flight a week. Sometimes the flights are cancelled, so you could be stuck there for 2 weeks, which wouldn't be a bad thing, let's be honest. But if we do go down to Santiago, I'd like to do some more of South America. I know that one of Alicia's bucket list places is Easter Island, which also departs from there, so that could be a big trip. We're almost there, but I'm just stopping for a quick snack. I'm absolutely starving. What's my favourite food? Probably Mexican, but sushi would be up there. Right, let's get through these. I've got no idea how long this video is going to be, so crack on. Is there somewhere you would never return to? I'm glad that question's come up, because they say you should never go back, don't they? And there are a few places where I've gone back a second time and not enjoyed it as much as I did the first. So that's one of the things that I get enjoyment from, of course, is finding somewhere new. So yeah, there would be a few places on the list, and I'm going to be controversial. I'm going to say the islands of Fula and Tiree in Scotland. I know they're great for surfing, so many people enjoy them for the beaches, but for me there just wasn't enough there. Nice to see them once, but I wouldn't go back. Right, I'm glad I've had my lunch before this one. What's the worst toilet you've ever had to use? Is there such a thing as the worst toilet? Because if you really need to go, then any toilet is good. But I would say those ones, it was in Poland I think, where you've got a toilet granny outside and she gives you like 2 sheets of paper. Is 2 sheets ever enough? How have you managed to resist sponsorships? Well, that one's quite easy. I don't do it for the money. YouTube earnings are enough that keeps the trips going, keeps my head above water. But of course, if someone came in with a ridiculous offer that would make the Falklands happen and pay for everything, I might change my tune. But until then, I'm quite happy to keep ads in general to a minimum, and that's why I don't have mid-roll ads either. Do you regret not spending longer at destination? Yes and no. It is a job at the end of the day, so I don't go into it like with a holiday mindset where you want to spend at least 3, 4, 5 nights somewhere. And I've also got a weekly upload schedule to adhere to, so I need to come back here to the office and do the editing, and accommodation is also very expensive, have to factor that in, so it's just the way it is, I suppose. Where would you live in Scotland if not Montrose? Well, the fact that we live in Montrose shows we're not too fussy, but anywhere with cheap property, fairly good transport links, a railway station helps. That's good enough for us, but what's not to love about Montrose? Look, I've done all of these and I've only got 3 cards left. Top, middle or bottom? Middle. We might be near the end, but these questions aren't getting any easier. How many countries have you visited and what's your top 5? I haven't added up the countries I've been to for years. I would estimate it's around about 40 to 50. I could be well wide of the mark with that number though. I'll have to do it again soon. In my top 5, that could be impossible and I just don't want to offend anyone, but I think Canada's got to be top of the list. Friendliest people in the world. And their next door neighbours, they might not be popular in the news at the moment, but United States of America, it's still a fantastic country. And I think I would possibly go somewhere in Scandinavia next. It could have been Sweden, but I'm going to have to opt for Norway just because I haven't travelled enough in Sweden yet. I think I've got to stay in Europe. I've got to go Germany and the Netherlands. There we go. That's it. That's my choices. But that is difficult. There's so many more places. Penultimate question. What are your tips for finding cheap flights and hotels? Well, I don't actually think I'm the person to ask for that. When it comes to flights especially, I just use Skyscanner, Google Flights, tend to go places that are cheap to book at the time. So yeah, I don't have much expertise on that, to be honest. With hotels, I just go in with the mindset that it's just a place to lay your head. You'll only be there when you're sleeping for a few hours and then you're out exploring again. So having that attitude means that I can deal with cheaper hotels. You've seen me in a few of those, haven't you? And here we are, the last card. What are your passions apart from travel? Well, that's a good way to finish actually, because what I'm sitting doing right now, just trying to be creative, that's what I like apart from travel, and that's why YouTube is such a perfect job for me. I have tried in the past to draw, to paint, and I was just never very good at it. Though I wanted that as a creative outlet, it never really happened. So I've found myself in the perfect place. And folks, you'll be delighted to know that's the end of the Q&A. If it's just a couple of things I can show you before I go, look, that was my first marathon, the year 2000. 4 hours 19 minutes. And I did a few marathons in my time, but the old knees are just not up to it anymore. What else have we got? Well, that was one of my favourite souvenirs, the stamps from Svalbard, the northernmost post office in the world. And there's the postmark with the polar bear. But there's only really one place to finish, isn't there? Sam Cruise 2024, the leaflet that I picked off the ground on the Grimaldi ferry. Perfect. Thanks for watching, folks. See you later.